So hi, Josh. I wanted to welcome you today. So my name is Kelee Allsop, and I'm a love, dating, and relationship coach, and I help women heal and transform their relationships. And what that looks like is we work on healing some core, childhood issues, so that and giving them some communication skills, relationship skills, so that they can have healthy relationships. And today I've asked Josh Connolly to come on and speak with me, and I'm super excited that he is here. And just a little bit about Josh, he's actually a life and business coach, but he's also a spokesperson for the National Association for Children of Alcoholics. And so he's very heavily involved in that organization. He really inspires people to look into their well-being, mental health. He shares a lot about his own journey. And he's someone that I've just been following for some time. I found him on Instagram, and I've always found myself really relating to his posts. And so I asked him to come on a live stream with me today so that he could share a little bit about his journey and hopefully some hope to those of you that might be struggling with similar issues. And so we've actually decided to live stream or record this live stream so that we can share this on our different platforms and affect those that need help with this. And before we get started into that, I'd like to just welcome Josh and just thank you so much for joining me today, Josh. I'm really grateful that you took the time out to speak with me. So, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's good to be here. It's good to talk. I've been following your stuff as well, especially on Facebook. You get, there's some, you do a lot of good posts on there that, like you say, are relatable, and there's not a lot of people doing it, especially not in this kind of sector, in this kind of thing that we talk about. So a lot of people have spent a long time in darkness and in silence because they've never seen anybody else articulating some of the things that you and myself are doing. So I know just how important it is.
Right. And we were talking a little bit before we decided to start recording about how we just need to really, stick together, because a lot of us are in darkness, and some people call it, going through a spiritual awakening. Some people call it just, living for the light. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but a lot of it, there's a lot of us that are starting to wake up and heal, and we don't know where to turn. And so it's very important for people like myself and you as well to make sure that we're continuing to show up and do this work in the world. It's very important, even though maybe the world tells us it's not important, we should be doing other things. So I definitely appreciate that you are doing this type of work. I really wanted to talk today. A lot of my audience is mostly women that are struggling with their relationships. And when they come to me, it's because of a relationship breakdown. Either they've broken up, they're going through a divorce, or maybe they're just having a lot of frustration or, maybe a little bit of disappointment in their relationship. But what it really stems from is they haven't been taught how to have healthy relationships and healthy interactions. And, we fall into some codependency, and there's a lot of those different things that I see. And so we really work on healing that inner child. And I know that I've followed a lot of your stuff, and you talk a lot about the inner child. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, how did your healing journey start?
Well, I had a problem with alcohol myself. So I used to escape through drink and drugs, but mainly alcohol. And I kind of reached a point where I decided that alcohol might be my problem. And so I was 24 years old, and I decided that I was going to quit drinking. But quickly after quitting drink, within a few months, like 7, 8, 9 months, I started to realize that alcohol wasn't my problem. It was more a kind of solution. It was offering me escape from the ways that I felt. And so when I started to recognize the ways that I felt, and I recognized I needed to start looking at that, that's when I started to realize that all these feelings and the emotions and everything that I was struggling with is stuff that had been stored there since I was a child. So that's when I realized my healing really needed to come from within, and from looking at myself, and from recognizing what I was doing. Most of my character and most of the things I did were coping mechanisms and ways of coping with things that I was struggling with. So yeah, my healing come from a place of darkness, really, from reaching a place where I had nowhere else to turn, and so finally I looked in.
Yeah, and I definitely relate to that as well. I feel like, you know, I stopped drinking about 6.5 years ago, and what happened for me was the same thing. I realized that alcohol, or, you know, other mind altering substances were just my solution for a much deeper problem. And that's when I really started to do the healing work, because I realized that if I continued to outrun myself through either, you know, drugs or alcohol. For me, luckily, alcohol stopped working, so my solution stopped working, and I had to find a different solution. And you know, that happens a lot with the women that I serve. But also, I think sometimes they can maybe relate to, you know, shopping stops being a solution, or their partner stops being a solution. And so it's really important to recognize, for me, that I think when we don't take the time to do the healing work, it's going to manifest in different ways, because we could have stopped drinking and then it would have manifested in all sorts of other self-defeating behaviors. And so I really appreciate that, you know, you brought that up. You know, you talk a lot you are a spokesperson. So tell me a little bit about that first, what you do as a spokesperson for is it the national, it's NARCOA, right? Or
it's NARCOA, yeah. So it's the National Association for Children of Alcoholics. And what's interesting is when I found NARCOA, I had began like my healing journey. So I was sober, and I was looking for a way to give back, really. I didn't know I had suffered as a result of my childhood. I didn't believe that I was a child of an alcoholic. And what I used to say before I found NARCOA was that my childhood was okay. It was difficult, but everybody has it tough. Everybody has it hard. And so I was telling myself these things to protect myself from ever having to look at it. And I searched for voluntary work, children and alcoholics on Google, and NARCOA came up, National Association for Children of Alcoholics. And I went along and I trained to be a helpline counsellor. So we've got, in the UK, we've got, it's an anonymous helpline that children or anyone affected by a parent's drinking can call, and they can do it completely anonymously. And we have trained helpline counsellors on the phone. And I trained to be one of them. And within the first hour of the training, I understood a whole lot more about the things that I had suffered with all my life. I started to recognize I was suffering still at the age, I was about 25, 26 by the time I found them. But I was still deeply, deeply suffering as a result of the things that had happened when I was a child. And so once I did the training and, you know, I worked as a helpline counsellor, I started to, I was almost annoyed. I was almost annoyed that I had suffered for so long, for so much of my life, and nobody had even given me a hint that some of the suffering was justified and that there was a reason for it. So I decided that I wanted to do as much as I could to raise awareness for that, really, and to start just carrying the NARCOA message and what NARCOA believes as far as wide as possible. And that's when I started the blog. That's when I started coaisAthing.com, and I started doing some YouTube videos and just trying to share what I felt on the inside and put it to the world and show that it does happen. It does happen to you. And when you are an adult, you can and do feel this way. And people really started relating, and so many people were suffering the same as I did, believing that they were the only ones. Because society has a way of telling you that for some reason, when you reach adulthood, you should be over whatever happened when you were a child. And we teach that, and we call that brain, and we say that's how it should be. and it's just not the case. We all struggle. We all struggle with the things that we were taught growing up, and the ways we learned to be in this world, and our perceptions of how we saw the world. And the blog grew, and then people started saying they would love to be able to share their story. So I said, let's do it. I said, if you email me the story, I can post it on there. You don't even have to tell anyone who you are. You can do it anonymously. And it just sort of grew from there, and it's gone global. So it's worldwide now. So it's read all over the world. And we all suffer from, the similar traits, different experiences, similar feelings,
Yeah, definitely. And I think that a lot of the women that I tend to work with or come to me, they have a lot of that similar. They had an alcoholic parent, or a parent that was very absent. And so there's a lot of healing that needs to happen with that. I do it specifically mostly through inner child and forgiveness work, because I believe that a spiritual solution is in order with this kind of stuff. But I really appreciate what you're doing. So I want to talk a little bit about, I like to relate things back to, we talked a little bit about, these things formed in your childhood. And because I'm a relationship coach, I like to relate that to like current day, like relationships. But when you were starting to discover all of these things through your work as a spokesperson and getting involved in NACOA, what did you learn about yourself as far as the negative beliefs that you were carrying about relationships that were now maybe manifesting in your life? And how did you work through some of that?
Well, the biggest realization was starting to become aware of why I feel and act in the ways that I do, and especially in relationships, because most of the dysfunction that I grew up with as a result of an alcoholic home, it all manifests itself within my relationships. So my unsort of dying belief that I'm not worthy and that I'm not good enough manifests itself in me in a deep desire to be loved. So that creates lots of problems within relationships. Most importantly is my difficulty in putting down boundaries. So
sure.
I find it very, very difficult, even today, even with the knowledge, and I'm learning and I'm changing and I'm growing, but I can still see myself. If, for example, my wife does something that upsets me, or I feel like has let me down, which happens, it happens in any relationship, I can find it difficult to express that because I get worried that if I say she's let me down, then it takes away from the love, or it's going to make her somehow love me less, and it's going to somehow ruin the relationship in some way. So I have a tendency to keep it to myself. Naturally, when I do that, that can then snowball and become resentment. And then before I know it, I'm going crazy about there being no milk in the fridge.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to do with that, but it's because I've filled up my internal self, and then I'm exploding naturally because I'm so full of emotions that I don't process. And that manifests itself as well within the family. So with my children too, I can tell my children off or tell them I don't want to do something. And if they get upset, I can start flipping everything back on its head and just saying, okay, you can do it. Because I've got that, that burning desire to be wanted and to be needed. But with that, I would say that one of the other real big issues I had, and this is much better for me now because the realization meant that I was able to change it, was this black and white thinking. And it was such a coping mechanism that I was using that I believed made me strong. I believed it made me really know who I was, and I knew you knew what you were going to get with me. But it also meant that I thought you could only love or hate somebody. There was no in between. So, when I was having a struggle with a relationship, because relationships never stay at pinnacles, do they?
No.
And so if I was having a day where I was, on a little bit of a less with the relationship, my mind would tell me, well, you obviously don't love them, you must hate them, so it's all over anyway, so there's no point.
Just give it all up right now.
Exactly. People talk about the F it button, you know, just hitting the F it button, and that black and white always led me to that place, because I believed, you know, the moment I made any small hiccup, the moment I made any tiny mistake, it meant that I couldn't be what I wanted to be, so I must be the bottom. It was only ever top and bottom, you know?
Yeah.
And life happens in between.
Yeah.
You know, everything happens in between. So, yeah, it caused me, that kind of thing caused me, and continues to cause me problems if I don't keep on top of it and I don't stay aware.
Sure. And I like that you're so humble. Like when I see you speak, I really like the approach, because you are like, hey, I'm a work in progress. And I believe that about myself as well, because I also relate to the black and white thinking. And, you know, I fight or flight. If something triggered me emotionally, it was like, well, fuck it. I'm not even going to have this conversation, or I'm just going to dismiss this person entirely. And that was something that unfortunately I learned from my mother, you know, is like, well, this person's not doing what I want them to do, then I'm going to dismiss them, or I'm going to fight with them. So there was two responses that I knew, which was fight or flight, which was very black and white, instead of like this middle response, which is a lot that I teach, like, hey, you know, I get to communicate my feelings about something and do it in a way that it's not threatening to not only other people, but also myself. And it was okay for me to do that, because I was also taught that it wasn't okay for me. I had to keep my mouth shut about a lot of things. And so it took me a really long time to learn how to use my voice without, as I would also get to either not say anything, so I would just kind of run away or just pretend the problem didn't exist, or I would get so upset because I let all these little things build up that I would just explode and become this, like, you know, Godzilla type of a woman. And nobody wants to be around that either. And then that eventually would cause people to be like, whoa, you're crazy because you continue to like explode. You can't handle your emotions. I don't want to be in a relationship with you. So I completely relate to the black and white thinking. And I think that a lot of the women that I work with, they do as well. It's like, well, he didn't text me back, it's over. Or my husband doesn't want to do this thing with me, it's over. Instead of just being able to take that healthy approach, which is in the middle, and be able to learn how to communicate these things as they come up. And that's really healing, I think, for us. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, my wife has taught me a lot in that respect as well, because you know, she hasn't had the dysfunction and things like that. So you know, she's given me real light bulb moments along the way in the ways that she's dealt with things. I remember the first time my wife said to me, I know I've upset you. I can see I've upset you, and I take responsibility for that. And when you're ready to come back round and talk to me, we'll talk about it. And I remember it stumping me, because I just thought, there's either no problem, or we're going to have a big shouting match about it until we've shouted and shouted and shouted. And then I've calmed down and I'm ready to then be okay again.
Right.
Whereas the normal, healthy, calm approach was alien to me, really. And also the ability to let things go. So not everything needs to, really be such a huge thing. I can have a disagreement with my wife and it be nothing more than a disagreement.
Right.
Whereas I used to, if we had a disagreement, the next morning my wife's comes down the stairs and I'm sat at the table waiting to discuss the disagreement, to thrash it all out. Whereas sometimes she's left it the night before. It was nothing but a little disagreement. Right. It's only me that wants to have this big ordeal about it. So yeah, it's important to learn from others as well, isn't it? And learn from people who act in a much healthier and more functional way than what I tend to.
Sure, definitely. And I always am preaching it's important to work with some sort of a mentor or coach or therapist, or somebody that you feel has maybe been where you want to be and takes a healthy approach to this stuff, because I didn't know this. Nobody ever taught me this. In my you know, growing up, I had an alcoholic stepfather, and then I had a mother was, you know, fairly absent a lot of the time. And so, you know, they fought a lot, and I learned that either it's peace in the house or there's like this big blowout. So it was that same thing that you're talking about. I didn't know how to have healthy communication or have a healthy relationship. And so about 4 years ago is when I really sought that out specifically for relationships, because I knew that, like, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just didn't have any clue, because and that was okay, because nobody ever taught me, and nobody ever taught my parents, right? Like, I had to learn also how to let that go and forgive them as well. And so, you know, it's important to recognize that we do get to continue to do the work. I'm not perfect. I have days where I feel extremely triggered, and I want to completely dismiss a relationship that I've, you know, taken so many years to build trust, or, you know, be vulnerable and connect in that way. And I want to throw it all away because I start to maybe internalize somebody else's view of life, or because that's what I heard you say, you know, like I would internalize this stuff with my wife, and then I would think it was this big disagreement, and she's just like, oh, that was just a disagreement. What are you talking about? Type of
exactly. Yeah. And it's so important to, like, going back to what you said about working with a therapist or a coach or a mentor of some kind. It's been vital to me throughout my healing, because of, you know, for a long time, and it's less so now, but I can still do it. It can be like a series of picking up ways of coping and ways of managing things, and then I can do them into the ground, a bit like what happened with alcohol. They can start to take an adverse effect on me, and I can start to use anything in unhealthy ways, right down to behaviors of, you know, people pleasing, being nice to people, use all that stuff, and you know, as much as all the self-awareness work that I do, and the sort of vigorous work that I do on myself, it's still most of the time I unlock stuff when I'm speaking open and honestly with someone who I know's got my back, but's going to call me out, and then it's going to question me and make myself, you know, ask myself then difficult questions, and then you kind of have then realizations that this is me. I'm looking over here, and it's all just here.
Right.
So it's been vital for me to have some kind of coach, some kind of mentor, friend, someone who I can really rely on, really, that's going to love me enough to be brutally honest with me when it's well.
I would agree with that. I feel like, and I always joke, so I have a therapist that I see regularly, I have a mentor, and I have a coach. So I have all three. And I always joke that it takes a village to raise me, because, like, I get different things from different people, as well as, like, when I watch maybe one of your videos or some of the other people that I follow, I'm like, oh my gosh, Josh just said this in a way that I've never heard it before, and that's really helping me. And so, you know, it's kind of back to the beginning of our conversation. It really is critical to learn from different people and just take what you want and leave the rest. You know, like, I know that I'm not going to relate to every single person out there that's on a platform of every sort, but what are the things that I've, you know, noticed that Josh has maybe done that he's incorporated into his life to heal? And I want to talk about that. Like, what does your healing look like today? And, like, what do you do today when you start to get off, like, when you maybe feel that blow up coming on, or you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to just have it all out. Like, it's all over, or the world feels like it's coming crashing down on you. What are the things that you do maybe in those moments, or also just on a regular basis, that help you avoid falling into some very unhealthy relationship pitfalls? Or when they do happen, what do you do to get back on track?
Yeah, it's a good question as well, because and I'm glad that you separated the two in what do I do when I reach certain points, and what am I doing on a daily basis, because for me, I have to try and be working in some kind of preventative way daily. There's a line for me, and when I cross the line, then I'm right into that emotion, and I can reach a place where there's not a lot of healthy things that I can do because I'm in it, and then I've just got to ride it out. You know, if you get blown too far off course, you're going to have to walk back. Yeah, you're going to have to take the long road back to get back on course. So for me, routine and of healing nature, and I'll explain what I mean by that, but it's vital to me. So I have things that I do in the morning and things that I do in the evening, and I do them without fail every morning. So I go to bed at 9:30 every night, unless my schedule really changes that, which is not often. And in the run up to that, I will always, so I have what I call a mindful shower. So when I shower, I'm allowing myself to remember that I'm washing the day away, so that I'm cleansing myself in a way. And then I prepare what I'm going to wear the next day. So I get it all pressed and ironed. And then I get myself in bed by about 9:15, and I'm asleep by 9:30 every time. And then I get up at 5:30 in the morning every morning. I make sure that I do 40 minutes at minimum of some kind of body movement to get my body firing up. Normally for me, that's the gym, weights in the gym. And then I make sure I do 20 minutes of mindfulness. And I say mindfulness, but it's quiet time. So sometimes it's mindfulness. Sometimes it's all types of mindfulness. For me, it all falls under mindfulness, but I'll do body scans, check my body, check for different ways that I'm feeling. And that's quite often when I will process what's going on. I notice when I'm struggling through physical feelings normally. So when I start doing a body scan, I can notice if my back's tight. If my tummy feels strange, it normally means I'm anxious and worrying about something. So I know I need to address that. If it's in my chest, it's normally more like fear-based. So it normally means I'm doing something I feel like I shouldn't be, and I need to address that. And then the tightness in my head and in my back often means that I'm upset. Not always, but these things, you know, doing this stuff and believing my body and listening to my bodies and the ways that I feel. Doing that every morning, it helps me to catch things before they reach that level. And where they're so routine, and people think it sounds a bit strange and a bit silly to do it so routine and so regimented, but when I have been triggered by something, and doing the stuff that I do now, talking regularly about my traumatic experiences, you know, going over old ground like that, I do get to these places where I'm triggered, but my routine is so strict, I fall into healing routine without even knowing it, and so I'm calming myself down. Because when I've reached that point and I'm triggered and I've like detached from myself and I'm acting strange, I don't tend to notice it. But when I fall into these routines, they can almost subtly and gradually bring me back, because they're there and because I'm doing them all the time, and I'm almost obsessed with making sure they're there. But they work, and you know, and they set me up for the day, and that, you know, the next 2-3 hours after I've done my movement and my mindfulness in the morning, that's when I'm most creative. That's when all my ideas come into my head. That's when I've quietened my mind down enough for inspiration and you know, the good feelings and everything that I enjoy and my purpose and all that. That I allow that into my mind. If I don't do that, I get crammed up with the hassle of life. And I think that's true all people, not just people that have struggled with some type of childhood trauma. I think we all get caught up with this negative talk and this, our minds get so filled with everything that we're reading on the internet and seeing on a daily basis. If you don't clear that, all you're thinking is what we're being fed. So that's what I do, and that's what's important to me. But when I reach the stages, I allow myself to feel them as well. Most of my problem, I recognize now, is the fight against the way that I feel. So I try and I don't have positive and negative emotions. I have emotions, and there's reasons for all of them, and I explore them. I get curious. Why am I feeling like this? What's my mind and my body trying to tell me? And that that way I can almost step aside from the pain and recognize the cause, or what I'm, what I'm trying to be told by myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And there's a few things I want to comment on with that. First and foremost, I relate, and I also appreciate that you brought up this idea of having a very strict practice of, a daily practice. I do that also as well. I wake up very early in the morning before I look at any social media or start to fill my mind with outside things. I'll take some time to meditate and journal and set my intentions for the day. That is my time too, where inspiration will flow in, because I'm empty. I'm not paying attention to the garbage out there. And then in the evening, that importance of getting enough rest, because I know that's actually a big trigger for me. I've learned over the years is when I feel like I'm breaking down emotionally, it's because I'm not sleeping enough, or I've gotten off track with my evening routine, where I'm not in bed by 9 o'clock at night, and I'm not doing those few little things to center myself even before I get into bed. So I believe very much in having a set sort of routine, morning and evening routine, whatever that looks like, right? It's going to differ for each person, but it's all about finding what works for you, because it is really sort of a preventative thing. I know that when I get off track from doing that, and it could just be as simple as 1 or 2 days off track, I really feel it, where my emotions are all over the place. And I don't take the time to get curious. I love that you use that terminology, because that's what I tell a lot of my clients. Like, let's get curious about this. I don't believe that emotions are good or bad. I don't believe in the duality of it. Feelings just are. They aren't positive or negative. It's whatever association we attach to that feeling. But let's get curious about why you're having that feeling. And so having that morning and evening routine is a very good way to center yourself, so you don't get to that place where you just have a blow up, or a meltdown. I'll be like, I'll start crying and not even know why I'm crying. And that, because you said it, I'm disconnected from myself. I'm disconnected from my body, and I'm not understanding that that's happening. And when I get to that place, it's like really hard to bring me back in. But if I'm taking the time every morning and every evening to really check in with myself, then I can usually avoid those things. I can usually avoid being triggered to the point of, having some sort of blow up or meltdown, And maybe it's just something that nobody else sees, but just me. But I don't like feeling that way either. But if I'm recognizing in the moment every day, okay, how am I feeling? Where is it showing? And I like that you mentioned, where is it showing up in my body? Am I fearful in my chest? Am I carrying some sort of burden on my shoulders? Does something feel heavy to me? What are the things that I can do to start addressing those? Because if I don't address that right now, in the next day or two, it's going to compound and it's going to get worse, right? It's going to feel even more intense. And so I really appreciate you bringing up those two things, because I think it's important to have a practice like that, whether you believe in any type of spirituality or anything like that. It's important to do a few things every single day to take care of yourself, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, so that you can be able to show up to all of your relationships as your best self.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, mine's evolved over time, and it changes. And I try new stuff. Breathing's so important. It's only been 2 or 3 years ago when I realized I've never really breathed properly all my life. And so, I experiment with different types. There's lots of different people doing different types of breathing exercises. And I know the ones that really, really work for me, but I do like to try, different ones as well. But the breathing's just so vital for slowing myself down, and like you say, just grounding myself and getting myself ready for the day. And I don't miss a day with doing that now. I used to at the beginning, it would be hit and miss, but I realized it's just so important for me to have that space in the morning, and whatever that space looks like for and it's different for different people, but like you say, whatever it is, the importance of it being there is huge.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about who is your ideal person that you work with when you do your coaching, and what do you sort of work on with your clients? Or is it more of, you just basically take it case by case, or is it mostly people that struggle because of their parents being an alcoholic? Or kind of what does that world for Josh look like when you're working with somebody?
Yeah, so I'm trained in the coactive model of coaching. So it's more about dancing in the moment and allowing whoever I'm coaching to design and create me how they want me to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I try as much as I can to detach from any reason why I feel like I might be coaching them,
Mm-hmm.
and try and work with them to allow themselves to get curious and explore themselves. Because you'll know yourself with coaching people, but quite often whatever gets brought to the table at the beginning is
It's
not
never the
actually
problem.
is never what's being brought to the
It's
table.
never.
And sometimes it's easy at the beginning for me to, when I meet people and we have like our initial sort of 30-minute conversation to see if we're going to coach together or where we're going to go. It's very easy to come away from that and think, I know what they need, I know what their problem is, and I know where we're going with this. And I try, coactive coaching is about coming away from that, and trying to stay as much dancing in the moment as we can, and acting on intuition and knowing that everybody that I coach is naturally resourceful, powerful, and strong.
Yes.
So yeah, for me, it's more, it's about trying to come away from any objective, and making it more about being curious, more about finding out what it is within yourself, because I believe everybody has that within
Mm-hmm.
them. That's why I talk about freedom from within, because
Yeah.
I believe that's where everybody's freedom comes from. And I'm passionate about children's mental health and children's well-being as well. And I feel like they're done a disservice. We do people a disservice from the moment they're born to right up through adulthood. Because there's a lot of people coming from a place of wanting to fix people.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody ever fixed me. Nakoa, when I found Nakoa, Nakoa created a space where I was able to feel strong enough and worthy enough to look within, and begin to find my own solutions.
Yeah.
So that's what my coaching is about. People come for various reasons. So I go in on a professional level, which is obviously usually slightly different to when on a private level, or when people do come from codependency issues or growing up in chaotic homes and things like that. They normally do work differently, but quite often they all find their own journey. Do you know what I mean? And
yes.
Well, for me, I always talk about creating a space. It's about creating that space where people feel empowered to find what it is they need.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I feel like that is definitely similar to the approach that I take as well. People come to me because of a relationship breakdown, but really there's always something that's under that problem. Their problem is never their problem. They think that their problem is one thing, but I don't tell them what their problem is. I allow them the space, like you said, to be able to explore that for themselves. And I ask the questions, right? The questions that maybe lead them to be able to come to their own conclusions, because I also believe that people have the power to heal. Like, I've healed myself. Nobody healed me. I went to maybe these teachers and healers that basically gave me my power back. They told me that it was okay for me to heal myself, and that I had the power within. You just said freedom from within. I think that's pretty much the same thing. I was able to do it on my own. I just had to be willing and maybe listen to some new ideas about what that might look like, and then implement that for whatever, situation I felt like was the tool was appropriate. So, I think that that's what's great about coaching or mentoring, is that we don't I don't always have the answers. In fact, I almost never do. I help people come to their own answers themselves, just like what you were saying. And it can be for various issues, you know, mostly they think it's because of their relationships, and it is, but really there's something underneath that we want to take the time to explore. So we're going to wrap up, but I wanted to let people know, where do they find you? Where's the best way to find you and maybe work with you if that's something that they're interested in? If they felt like, you know, inspired to contact you, what would that look like?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is visit my website, and my website is just joshconnolly.co.uk. So it's joshconnolly.co.uk. My email address and all my contact details are on there, but all through my social media. So as you know, I'm very like yourself. I'm very active on social media, very interactive as well. I don't use social media in a standoff way. I like to interact with people and, you know, be on the journey with them. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I've got a YouTube channel as well. I also just started a blog on my website.
Okay.
That's more of a coaching, self-discovery type blog, to run alongside, obviously, coaisatthing.com, which is the platform for children of alcoholics. And it's probably also worth mentioning, I've got a private Facebook group as well, or secret Facebook group on Facebook, where people can join, and it's just peer-to-peer. So it's just people affected by parents drinking, or just sharing experience and sort of supporting and helping each other. But everything can be found on the website. All the links to all the social media are on my website. So that's the best place to land, really.
Great. Well, I am so grateful for you taking this time to come on and share some of your experience and some of the things that you do to get grounded and centered, so that you don't necessarily react to life, you respond in a loving way. And I'm just so excited to see what you're up to next. I always am following you and looking at your page and liking your stuff, and not in a creepy way, but just in a, like, this guy knows his stuff, you know, like he knows his stuff, and it's very empowering for someone like me to see what you're doing in the world and go, oh, this is great. Like, he's got this, you know, he's got his own view on all of the same kind of things that I'm teaching and studying as well. And so it's been really cool to, like, watch you. I think I've been following you probably at least over a year now, maybe. And I just had the courage to be like, I'm going to ask that guy if he wants to talk to me. And, you know, I mean, I'm still kind of feeling a little like, oh, you know, let's see if that would even be possible. But I really do appreciate you taking the time. And we will, you know, I'll send you this recording. We can just send it to whoever, you know, is benefited by it.
Yeah. And I'll post it all out. I'll probably chop some bits up as well. And put some shorter bits out and some social media, you know, size stuff. So it'd be good. And it's just, you know, it's more ways of getting it out there and allowing people to do what you're doing, because I do the same with your social media and other people's social media. I get curious and I explore and I discover. And that's, you know, that's the great thing. Social media gets a lot of negative feedback. So the great thing about it is the way we're able to explore, like you said. So
I agree. And I found a lot of my tribe, so to speak, online, because I feel like there's people that really understand where I've come from, what I've been through, and then are also using social media as a very positive tool to help other people. And that's very, very inspiring to me. And I always tell, you know, there's a few women that I'm privately coaching right now. There's one in particular that she's like, I want to do what you're doing. I'm like, well, you should. Like, there's always room. I mean, we live in an abundant universe. There's always room. There's somebody invariably, there's always somebody that's going to be affected by something that you post, right? Like, you may not know in the moment, you know, why you're posting what you're posting. At least I don't. But invariably, somebody's always helped by it. And I think that the more of us out there doing this type of work, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate all that you brought to the table today, and we'll be in touch soon.
Good stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.